Welcome in to another episode of Women's Basketball Now here on the Hoop Central YouTube channel. We've got another transfer portal show coming up for you here today. We've been talking a lot about this over the last month or so here on this YouTube channel. We've been talking on a ton of our podcasts about players moving from one school to another. Obviously, the transfer portal this year in women's college basketball has blown up, probably more so this year than in any other year since the transfer portal started. 2022 has been a season of change for so many of the top players in women's college basketball. Thousands of players have already been on the move, and we've again already had a couple of episodes talking about top players going from one school to the next, and we're going to do the same here in this episode as well. We're going to be talking about a ton of high-level programs here on this episode. We're going to be talking about what's going on at Baylor. There are a couple of players coming into Maryland. Obviously, they have had a ton of players go out, but they've had some come in as well. LSU, we're going to talk a lot about them, including Angel Reese committing it to Kim Mulkey and the Tigers. We'll also go over what's going on at Virginia Tech and Pitt as well. But again, we're going to start with Baylor and talk about three players that they are bringing in. Jana Van Gytenbeek from Stanford, Aijha Blackwell from Missouri, and Dre'Una Edwards from Kentucky. Van Gytenbeek plays the guard spot, and that's something that Baylor needs more of, more consistency, more potency in their backcourt. She did not get a whole lot of playing time at Stanford. She was a part of the 2020 class, was ranked 39th overall in that class according to ESPNW, but this past season only played about 8 minutes per game, averaged 2.2 points. But the biggest thing that she's going to bring to Baylor is three-point shooting. When she did get out on the floor and when she did score, it was the three-point line where she was really getting a lot of her shots off. 37.8% she shot from three this past season. Again, only averaged 2.2 points, but when she did get out there, she was a threat from the three-point line. Aijha Blackwell and Dre'Una Edwards made a lot more impact at their schools than Van Gytenbeek did. Blackwell at Missouri averaged a double-double, 15.4 points and 13 rebounds this past season, 49.5% from the floor, 33% from the three-point line. And for a player that is primarily going to work on the inside, to shoot at 33% from behind the arc, that's a good sign. She has that versatility. She's developed that since coming into college. And 50% shooting from the floor. Consistent. Consistency is the key here. For all of these wing and post players that play in the interior, you want to see them hover around 45 to 50% shooting. And again, 15.4 points and 13 rebounds were her averages this past season for Missouri. And Dre'Una Edwards, also coming out of the SEC from the Kentucky Wildcats, averaged 16.8 points for them this past season on 44% shooting from the floor. In a stretch there for Kentucky where they won 10 games in a row, she averaged 20.5 points, 30 versus Missouri against Aijha Blackwell and the Tigers, 27 versus South Carolina in the SEC championship game, which they defeated the national champion Gamecocks. That was one of only two losses for South Carolina this past season. Edwards played huge in that game, and again, 30 against the Missouri Tigers. Just those performances there, you see those two games, the average of 20.5 in that 10-game win streak, you see just how consistent she can be. She's not only good from the inside, where she plays primarily, but she can hover around the perimeter as well. Hit that mid-range, also hit that three-point shot. Again, none bigger for her than the game winner against South Carolina in the SEC championship game. And that game was a perfect example of what she can do inside and out. So you get a ton of versatility here if you're Baylor. With Dre'Una Edwards, Aijha Blackwell, and Jana Van Gytenbeek. All of them do something different. All of them do something very well. For, again, Blackwell, it's the ability to pull down rebounds and get that double-double. For Edwards, it's her versatility. Inside, but also becoming an outside threat. And for Van Gytenbeek, knocking down three-point shots. That's what she's going to bring to the table primarily. So Nicki Collen has to be really thrilled with the work that they've done in the transfer portal this offseason. Again, bringing in Jana Van Gytenbeek, Aijha Blackwell, and Dre'Una Edwards. As for Maryland, this is a school that lost a lot of players when players were first starting to transfer, and the movement was first starting to happen about maybe 6-7 weeks ago. You saw Angel Reese leave. We'll talk about Angel Reese coming up in a moment. You saw Ashley Owusu leave. We'll talk about her as well in this episode. You saw a ton of players start to leave and transfer out, which is kind of something that happens per usual at Maryland every offseason. But they've started to bring some players in. Abby Myers from Princeton was a huge get, Ivy League leading scorer, really going to bring a lot of impact to them. And now you bring a couple other players in. Brinae Alexander from Vanderbilt, and Allie Kubek from Towson. And both of these players were very, very good for their teams. Again, Vanderbilt is a program that they haven't won a ton of games. They haven't been a great team over the last run of years. But Brinae Alexander was really good for them this past season. She averaged 15.2 points and 3.5 rebounds. She had a 36% clip from the three-point line as well. So just like Abby Myers, Brinae Alexander is going to bring that ability to shoot the basketball. Allie Kubek out of Towson averaged 14.6 points and 6.2 rebounds, was named third-team All-CAA. Again, two really high-level impact players here. Kubek was very good at the mid-major level in the Colonial Athletic Association. Again, third-team All-CAA, averaging just under 15 points. Brinae Alexander, 15 points, 3.5 rebounds for Vanderbilt. Both of these players, again, going to bring something a little bit different to the table. Alexander, good three-point shooter, really complete offensive player. Allie Kubek, not as much of that three-point threat, but is going to drive and slash and get into the paint and can really do that consistently. So I like what Maryland's doing here with the transfers that they are bringing in. Now, in addition to Kubek and Brinae Alexander and Abby Myers and Alyssa Pinson from USF, they're bringing in recruits as well. Maryland is really starting to patch the holes that were left by the transfers. And again, most off seasons we see some players transfer out of Maryland, and that's something that's become a consistent issue, something that they don't want to see moving forward. But again, it's something here in 2022 that we saw again. But credit to Brenda Frese for getting out there and looking at transfers in the portal that would be interested in coming to Maryland. Again, a ton of spots were open because a lot of the team that they fielded last year isn't coming back this year. It's going to be a very new look team. So it's going to be interesting to see what Maryland puts out on the floor this season. We know they're going to have that experience. And with the transfer portal, instead of going and bringing in 5 players from high school, you can go in and bring 4 or 5 players out of the transfer portal. You get that experience. You have players that have seen it, that have been there, and that have done it. And I think that's the appeal of going into the transfer portal. Obviously, you still have to recruit. Recruiting is still super, super important. But if you go into the portal and you can get some players out of there, you're going to have a much better basketball team because you have players that are experienced, that have a year, 2, 3, maybe even 4 under their belt if they're playing a 5th year, a grad year, COVID year, whatever that might be. So Maryland looks really good right now. Virginia Tech is bringing in Ashley Owusu, who formerly played at Maryland, was really good for the Terrapins this past season. 14.3 points, 3.1 rebounds, 3.6 assists were her averages, while shooting 42% from the floor. She is taking her talents to Blacksburg, Virginia to play for the Virginia Tech Hokies. She scored in double figures in 20 of 27 games for Maryland. She had 30 versus Stanford back in November of 2021. This past season, again, was really good, was really consistent for Maryland, but eventually found herself not in the starting lineup but on the bench. And that maybe was a factor in why she transferred, was that she wasn't in the starting lineup. Remember, she was the Drysdale Award winner in 2021, was one of the best shooting guards in the country over her time at Maryland. But again, felt that need to go into a different program to maybe have a little bit more freedom. And she's going to get that at Virginia Tech. Again, her averages were consistent, double figures in 20 of 27 games. VT is a team that needs a player like Ashley Owusu in the backcourt, because what they've had is great front court play over the last couple of years with Elizabeth Kitley and some of their other posts. They've been really good. They've been really good in the front court on both sides of the basketball. It's just offensively in the backcourt, they haven't had as much firepower since Dara Mabry left and went to Notre Dame. They haven't had a player in the backcourt that has really been able to light it up. Well, Ashley Owusu is going to be that player for them. So I'm very excited to see what she brings to the table. The LSU Tigers doing some really good work here in the transfer portal as well. Bringing in 2 players. Kateri Poole from Ohio State. We're going to talk about her in a moment. But first I want to focus on Angel Reese. No question the top player in the transfer portal. Since she announced that she was leaving Maryland, she was definitely the most sought-after player in the portal. And a ton of the top programs were interested. Notre Dame was there. We heard some stuff about UConn. But she picks LSU. She's going to play for Kim Mulkey. You look at this past season, the work that she did, very impressive. 17.8 points per game, 10.6 rebounds, while shooting 50% from the floor. She was the first player since the 1970s to average a double-double for Maryland. And this 2021-2 season was the first full season for her because in her freshman year in 2020, she had injuries. She missed some games. She didn't play the full season. She was fully healthy this past season, and we see at 100% what she can do. And again, we talked about the backcourt woes for Virginia Tech. LSU has had issues in the front court as far as just having a player that you can just get it down into, and you know that they're going to go to work, you know that they're going to score. A big-time threat on the interior. They haven't had that as much. I mean, Autumn Newby was really good for them, but Angel Reese brings something a little bit different. With her versatility, with her size, and with her length at 6'5", she is going to be huge factor for LSU. She's going to be a big-time player from day one. And she's a player that is definitely All-American caliber. And going into that program and that system, she's going to be really good. Now, Kateri Poole comes over from Ohio State, another Big Ten program. Her impact for the Buckeyes wasn't as felt. 4.8 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists, while shooting 39% from the floor. She's streaky shooting the basketball, whether that be from the mid-range, whether that be from the outside. She's not as potent of a scorer as other guards in the portal, but she brings the ability to handle the basketball, kind of play that up-tempo system, and distribute it. Again, she averaged a couple assists per game. I see her being maybe a rotational player for LSU. She could find herself in the starting lineup because they are losing players in the backcourt, but again, I see her making a solid impact for this LSU team. Obviously, Kim Mulkey has told her, you're going to make more impact here than you would at Ohio State. So maybe she does get into that starting lineup and has more opportunity to score. Because she was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Was recruited by many top programs in the country. And during her time at Ohio State, just didn't play up to her full potential. And again, Ohio State's another team where we see a lot of players transfer out. And it's not only Kateri Poole this offseason, but also Gabby Hutcherson. Left Ohio State and now is going to the Pitt Panthers out of the ACC, a program in women's college basketball that we don't talk about a whole lot. And it's just because they haven't had a lot of consistency. They haven't been able to bring in recruits at as high a level as other programs in that conference. They have not been as great of a team, just putting it nicely. But she's going in to try to make an impact there. Like Kateri Poole, her impact at Ohio State wasn't felt. And it's strange because she also was a high-level recruit, top 35-40 recruit in the country in the class of 2020. Averaged only 3.3 points and 2.3 rebounds this past season. She shot 39.9% from the floor, 30% from three, 62% from the line. Some of those numbers are going to have to improve if she wants to be at that all-conference type of level, which she has the potential to be an all-conference type of player. But when you look at her shooting percentage and her free throw percentage at 62.5, she's definitely going to be working on that and trying to get around 45 to 48, maybe even 50% shooting from the floor. Again, it's hard to get to 50 for some players, but if you can get around 45 to 48% shooting, especially if you're an interior focused player, which she plays the wing, she is playing inside more so than outside, you do want to see that. And she's a solid threat from the three-point line. 30%, not great from the outside, but can hit a three-pointer here or there. And for Pitt, this is a huge, huge land. You get a player that was ranked in the top 40 coming out of high school, one of the best players in her state, at Westerville, Ohio, on and on and on. That's huge for the Pitt Panthers because they need impact players like this if they're going to turn their program around. And Gabby Hutcherson seeing that opportunity to take her game to the next level. And she realized that was not going to be at Ohio State. That was going to be at Pitt, again, out of the ACC. So those are just some of the players that are on the move in the transfer portal right now. I'm sure over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to have more episodes talking about players in the portal going from this school to that school, on and on. But again, we have enjoyed bringing this episode of Women's Basketball Now to you. We have a ton of content coming up on this channel right now through recruiting, through the transfer portal, through WNBA. We're going to start getting some WNBA stuff out on the channel as well. You're not going to want to miss it. There is a ton coming up. Stay tuned and stay locked on Hoop Central on YouTube. This is Hamilton Neal signing off. I'll see you in the next video.